So welcome to the Reform UK Meet the Candidate talk in Redruth. That's where I am today, isn't it?
Yes.
In Redruth. So we had a really busy one in Camborne on Monday. Tomorrow we've got a Huskies here in Redruth. Up at Wesley there. So if anybody wants to come along to that, you'll see the other candidates there as well. I'll be talking with the other candidates. So what we do here is I tell you very briefly about myself, and some of you have heard it all before, and then we'll talk about a little bit about reform, how it's going, and maybe a few policies, and then it's your chance to ask me anything that you need to know about reform. So a lot of people, I see some familiar faces here, so they'll know that I'm Roger Tarrant and I'm the candidate for Camborne, Redruth and Hale. I'm a small business owner. I was previously Southwest Chairman for the Federation of Small Businesses, from covering Gloucestershire all the way down to the Isles of Scilly. And I got a first class degree in politics. I've always had a kind of keen interest in politics since then. And I've learned an awful lot about local issues since I was the chairman for the Federation of Small Businesses as well. So business is quite a hot topic for me, but there's an awful lot else going on. I've learned a lot more since I've been running this campaign of some of the real issues that we need to tackle. And the three things when I'm knocking the doors, I get, there's a lot of people struggling with accommodation, dentistry, a lot of people struggling with that, and obviously people really worried about the spillages into the sea and rivers. But on a larger scale for reform, what are people voting for reform for? Well, because it's the only alternative. All the other parties really agree with each other. So you've got, they're all agreeing, they're all looking for higher taxes, and all in there capturing the cost of living crisis. They all want more and more wasteful spending and regulation, again in a cost of living crisis, spending that money, our money. And they all want higher and higher energy prices in a cost of living crisis. Reforms policies are opposed to that. They all are seeking the net zero, and you're not allowed to question it. And they're all seeking mass immigration. Not immigration, we're not talking about that, we're talking about mass immigration. When you get 2.5 million people, or 2.4 million people, but that figure's quite underestimated, coming here legally in the last 2 years, there has been, compared to the amount of people who came in 1066 to the year 2010, that's an enormous lot of people, and that puts a real pressure on housing locally as well as the country. It puts a pressure on the NHS that people pay their taxes for, and it puts pressure on education and schools. So it's not about demonising anybody or vilifying anybody. So I wouldn't want to vilify anybody coming into our wonderful country. Who I blame is our woeful politicians and the parties that are not listening to the people. Not once has anyone been asked if this is the sort of policy we want. People are. And when they're standing for election, they're all agreeing with each other, so you don't have a choice to vote for anybody. So this time there's a real choice. And I think it's made it an exciting election time before. How boring would it be? One, everyone's been I was politically homeless, that's why I stood. And I feel like I'm one of the silent majority, because everybody I speak to seems to agree with me, quietly, sometimes quietly. Other people have stood up and put some signs up, thank you, for those who've done that. And if anybody here hasn't yet and would like to, then join the revolt against the mainstream parties. There's a real chance here. I think this constituency particularly has got a real chance of getting a reform candidate in, make a real difference. I keep getting asked, what makes you different from the other ones? How can we trust you? And it would be pointless standing, I think, if I feel like you have to be honourable and do it for the right reasons. And I said to my wife, the two things: one, I can't let the people of the constituency down when I get there, and the other thing is I can't be captured by them. Because that's what they do to a lot of people. They go up there, they're in the club, And you've got to be here for the people you represent. And too often, I think, they're worried about what they look like to the rest of the world and looking after everybody else. And as an MP, you should be looking after your constituencies. And then as in the government, you should be looking after the country. First, charity begins at home, then you can help other people. So those are sort of the reasons, but the main, probably the reason that I stood is I noticed that certain subjects weren't allowed. And for me, that's an attack on democracy, it's an attack on freedom of speech, civil liberties, and it's designed to shut down debate. You can't talk about certain subjects. And if you believe in net zero, it's fine. Tell me why, give me the evidence. I'm open-minded enough, I would listen to that. If you believe in mass immigration, tell us why, but let us then say why we think that's wrong, and then we can come to a decision, can't we? You can't shut down debate and just vilify people. So I've said at the last meeting, I'll just finish by saying this, you have to look at critical thinking, and I was saying this to some school council the other day. I said to the young lads, just listen to this one thing and it will see you through everything. If they're attacking the person, not the subject, not the debate, and vilifying the person, they're shutting down the debate. They're not willing to talk about it. In critical thinking, you've got to watch that. So you quite often get that. They attack the scientist, they'll attack the person, and not what the scientists are saying. And the other thing is if they won't debate, they say, oh, it's finished, the debate is settled, then again, if they won't debate it, they've lost the debate. That's what it means. So in critical thinking, those are the two things you have to watch out. Them attacking the person or not debating you. Because if they really believe in whatever they believe, why wouldn't they show you the evidence, be proud and tell you how wrong you are? But they don't. That's the two things. And those kind of things, that's really what made me stand more than anything. You can't talk about things. And when I was at school, I used to say, it's a free country, I can say anything I want. You can't say that now. You will get, for instance, and some of you will be aware of this in some way, but the Telegraph newspaper did a Freedom of Information request. And in it, they found out that in a 5-year period, this is quite a while ago now, so there's many more, but in this 5-year period that they're looking at, there was 120,000 non-crime, so it wasn't a crime, hate speech, basically having a different opinion. Now, it's only the Parliament is sovereign to make laws. This was the College of Policing, very hard left, or Quango, set up by Tony Blair, that needs to be abolished. And if you've got one of those, you can't work as a nursery nurse, a school teacher, a care worker, any of those things, because you'll go on your DBS, which used to be CRB, which is Disclosure Barring Services. And you think, because you had a separate opinion or made a joke, and within that we've had Christians who are praying in their head, being asked by the police, what are you doing? This is all documented, by the way, this is not conspiracy theory, this is documented, this is evidence, you can find this out quite easily. Because she was taken into custody for wrong thing, which is, anybody read 1984 George Orwell? It's frightening. And it's the same with, it was exactly the same with an ex-policeman who tweeted a trans limerick. It was a joke. And they came to him and said, we need to correct your thinking. He took them to the High Court. So this is all documented. He won, and successive Home Secretaries, Conservative Home Secretaries, have said there should be no non-crime hate speech. It's against the law. But they've just carried on. They did. So the police are now breaking the law. So this is just one element. There's loads, but that's just one on the freedom of speech thing that really sort of motivates me. So let's throw it open now to you, because there might be a subject that you particularly, the NHS or I don't know, loads of there's so much out there, and they're all seem to be doing the same thing. You can't really put much between the main parties with the actual only alternative that's fighting against this. Now so there's some people that like what's happening, but I would say the majority don't. Professor Matt Goodwin has done a lot of research on this. He's a politics professor in his 40s, and he said that 80% of people in his research believe what Reform believe. It's just the institutions that have been captured, like the National Trust, like all the corporations, and just Federation Small Business that I belong to. I'm still a member because actually the protections are really good, But how it's been captured is why I'm no longer involved with that. So let's open it to the floor. Has anybody got a burning